Can you be approved for a new loan, specifically a student loan and a credit card on the same exact day? Well, having not really found much out there in the way of student loans specifically and credit card approvals, in the name of science, I had to go and figure it out for myself. And so if you want to see what happens and if it's possible, make sure you stick around until the end and make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already because it really, really helps the channel. All right, let's get into it. So why are we even in this position to begin to answer the question in the first place? Well, I'm heading back to school to get my MBA here in the fall shortly, and I'm moving here in the next couple of weeks. And so because a loan, for student loans specifically, is so much money, you want your credit score to be in tip-top shape whenever you're applying for that type of loan or a mortgage or an auto loan. And so with your credit score, there are 5 different factors that make up your overall credit score when it comes to the FICO model. And that's payment history, amount owed, new credit, length of credit history, and credit mix. So when it comes to your payment history, a lender is looking at whether or not you've paid your past credit on time. When it comes to amount owed, that's 30% of your overall breakdown, and that looks at your overall credit utilization. So the amount of money you owe divided by your overall credit limit. So if I have a credit card with a $10,000 line and I spent $2,000 that month, my overall utilization is 20%. You want to try to keep that overall utilization below 10% by making payments throughout the month. But if you forget or something, as long as you keep it below 30%, that's deemed as being okay, but really you want to try to keep that low. Length of credit history, which makes up 15%, just looks at the overall age of your oldest account, as well as the overall average of the number of accounts you hold. When it comes to credit mix and new credit, those are both worth 10% respectively. And credit mix looks at different types of credit. So whether you have a credit card, an auto loan, a mortgage, student loan, etc. And then lastly, the last bucket here, new credit, 10%. Which looks at the number of new applications and inquiries and new cards and new lines of credit that you've opened up in the last 12 months or so. These are typically nothing to be worried about, and I preach to the choir that it is a myth that this is a big deal and you don't have to worry about hard inquiries, especially because they drop off rather quickly. However, when it comes to applying for a loan of this magnitude and this much money, or something like mortgage or a car loan where it's big dollar figures, and you need your credit to be in tip-top shape, I was really focusing on maximizing and optimizing the lack of new credit. I didn't want to have any sort of temporary dip, was not applying for new cards over the last number of months, and was really trying to focus on what I could influence, specifically around the amounts owed, by keeping my overall utilization extremely, extremely low, even more so than usual. So when it comes to how I was specifically monitoring and managing this overall process up until the point where I was applying for the student loan, you can see it's been up here around the 806 and 805 range for the last handful of months and has been climbing steadily over the last 6 months. Someone's got to talk to this UI person. It's hard to read, but 798 or so up through the 800s. And when we look at the hard inquiries and specifically how I manage that, you can see here over the last year, I wasn't really applying for new lines of credit on the personal side. I had a Capital One pull, which was from my Venture X a little over a year and a half ago or so. And then you see here on June 19th, then I had one for the student loan, as well as for a new card, new credit card on the same day. But I was really trying to manage these over the last year and a half or so. And I did have some personal lines of credit approved within the Q3 timeframe of last year, but I wanted to give it a good 8 months or so to let things fall off. So when it came time to actually apply for the student loan, I went and shopped around at a number of different banks, such as Chase and SOFI, etc. And so when you do that, you don't have a new hard pull every single time. The hard pulls are kind of lumped together during this shopping around period, as long as they're the same type of category of inquiry. So in this case, being a student loan, getting an application at all these different places doesn't continually give you hard credit pull after hard credit pull after hard credit pull. They all lump together and they're just like one massive one when it's a period of like 30 days or so. And so this was new to me, being able to actually see this play out. Obviously, I had researched it ahead of time, but being able to see it firsthand, pretty cool. So that allows you to shop around and get the best possible rate without having to worry about a continual decline in your credit score. So after I was happy with the overall rate that I was able to secure, leveraging this over 800 credit score that I've worked to accumulate, I went ahead and actually formally applied and signed off on the overall application, which is that June 19th overall hard pull that you see there. And so from there, step 1 of the overall experiment was done. Being approved for that student loan, a big milestone in terms of the overall logistics of not only going to school, but also in terms of this experiment here on credit card and student loan on the same day. The next part of the experiment comes into play with the overall credit card application process. And you might say, Colin, why in the world do you even want to worry about getting a credit card on the same day you finally secured your student loan? Well, I'm always on the hunt for free money when it comes to sign-up bonuses. And sign-up bonuses are a great way to earn some extra cash on the side from buying things that you normally would already. And so on the specific card that I was looking at, which was the Capital One Savor card, which gives you a $200 sign-up bonus after spending $500 in the first 3 months. It's a card I've been targeting for a really long time, and Capital One is pretty finicky when it comes to approving people for new lines of credit and new credit cards when you have a lot of credit cards and recent applications like I tend to do, because I'm always kind of chasing sign-up bonuses and working on new card applications. And so now that I had secured the student loan and gotten that out of the way, because that was way more important to get a solid rate than a $200 sign-up bonus for a credit card, I had that all sorted out and was able to turn my attention back to what I love, which are credit card applications and getting new credit cards. Moving my attention back to this, I wasn't as worried about a second hit to my credit from a new credit application. As we saw, where the 10% makeup of the new credit line, while we noted earlier that the multiple applications on the loan front get bundled, when you apply for another new credit card, that is a separate hard pull. So separate from the loan application to the credit card application, two individual hard pulls, which we saw on the account earlier on June 19th. Not being as worried about where my impact to my credit score was, I was able to go ahead and progress with this next step. So when it came to the actual application, and you're going to need to wait a little bit longer to see whether or not it's possible to get approved for both. But you see here from the second application, or the two applications on that day, I went from a score of 805 to 800. So if, again, this UI is not very good, but 800 June 19th. And so from two hard applications, I was able to only drop 5 points on my overall credit score. So there we go again, back to the two applications on the same day. And then it went down a whopping 5 points. So not too big of a deal. And it's already recovered a bit back to 802, not really a big impact overall. However, every little point matters, especially when it's coming to a big application like a student loan, which is a hefty sum of money. Not too big of a deal in terms of overall score impact, which I didn't know how exactly it was gonna, affect it, but good to know that it was still pretty small, even with multiple on the same day. I already stressed that one hard pull, no big deal, but the fact remains the same pretty much of two hard pulls on this day, in this case, only a drop of 5 points. So no big deal there. And that was on my TransUnion score. And so the other interesting thing to note is that on the Equifax score, you can see that June 19th, it did not go down because it was not pulled from that credit report. So it just took my TransUnion, which dropped at 8 points. Equifax just kept climbing to this past point. And as you'll see here, did not have the hard inquiry on the June 19th date of this year. So another interesting thing to note of which one they decided to pull on this overall application for both fronts, the loan and the credit card. All right, now the moment you've all been waiting for. Now that we've outlined the process, my thought process, my methodology on how I approached saving hard inquiries so that I could have my credit score be in the best possible position when it came to the student loan, and then seeing the impact of my credit score when that second hard application hit the overall credit score. So without further ado, let's see what happens when I clicked that submit application button. All right, one more click to see if I'm pre-approved. Dun, 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 processing pre-approval. Fingers crossed. Wow. Okay. So I am pre-approved, and we're going to actually accept this Savor offer. I'm going to scroll through this. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm going to go ahead and accept the offer. Can't believe it. It's going to result in a hard inquiry, and they state that we might need to verify information before opening the account. We're going to go ahead and accept the offer, processing it. I'm really excited, you guys. Like, this is huge. Really, really excited about this Savor rewards card. So there we go. As you saw from my incredible jubilation, I was over the moon to finally be approved for this new card. And When done properly, it is possible to be approved for a student loan and a credit card on the same day within a few hours, even. When it comes to the prioritization and focus on these approvals, you do really want to prioritize the more important one in terms of getting a good rate on your mortgage, student loan, or auto loan. But with having the credit card thrown in as a cherry on top on this case, without having to worry about my overall credit score dropping a couple points at this point, I was really happy to be able to go ahead and move forward with this credit card application. If you want to look at a more in-depth video on that overall credit card application, the Capital One Saver, check out the video right here. Or if you're in the market for looking for a new loan and need to increase your credit score fast, check out the video right here. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment for more videos like this. Thanks so much. I'll see you over there.